The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Good morning, America. Good morning, world. Good morning, CHD. Welcome. Once again, my name is Michael Kane. I'm the Director of Advocacy at Children's Health Defense. Today, it's almost back to school time throughout the nation, and we're going to be bringing on Sarah Doe, the high school student who was denied her medical exemption in New York. Children's Health Defense fought and got her back in school. We're going to be talking to her about what the year back to school that just passed was like for her and what advice she has for others in the same situation as her going to school. Then my colleague Stephanie Lucretio is going to be speaking to Mana Washio about EMR-induced syndrome. And you definitely want to stick around for the entire hour. An excellent show as always we have here. But first, let's do a couple of news headlines. CHD just launched our Back to School campaign, a toolkit for you and for everybody out there dealing with the the exciting and the very scary reality of going back to school. In the toolkit, we deal with informed consent, the vaccination. What are the exemption policies in your state? What exemptions are available to you and not? We deal with issues surrounding food, issues that are surrounding health centers and informed consent, signing of paperwork, and much more. The link is in the show notes below here. Please go through it. Look at all of the various questions that we have for you to ask school officials before sending your child back to school, before you sign away rights without knowing it. This is a great toolkit for you to look into. And here's a perfect example as to why you need to be concerned about these things in New York State. Before going to school, summer camp is getting ready to ban all unvaccinated kids. Right now in New York, there is a bill on Governor Hochul's desk that would ban all unvaccinated kids from all summer camps. It would make it the first nation in the country to have such a draconian ban. We have an action we're promoting, actually at Autism Action Network, our sister organization, telling Hochul, don't sign this. Don't sign this bill as you're running for re-election to continue to be the governor of New York State. Here's another action that we just launched, not just in New York, but nationally. We want to protect the biometric information of children athletes. There are schools, school districts, and states that are requiring biometric data to be harvested from children for them to play flag football, for them to be involved in normal extracurricular activities. There is actually federal legislation that makes this illegal. So that action is also in the show notes. Very, very important too. We're going to be having some shows here at CHD TV talking about those issues as well too, moving forward. So stay tuned for that. You're going to learn much more about that. Greg Glazier is really at the tip of the spear regarding that action. And it's really important because since COVID, there really, truly is a creep on student-child biometric information. It's something I dealt with in the schools of New York City. I got to do a show to go over that. Again, where they were trying to steal our DNA information from COVID test samples. That was totally legal in New York City for a short period of time. Okay, so with that, we are ready to kick off back to school here at CHD TV and bring on my two guests. We have student at Oceanside High School, Sarah Doe, as well as her attorney, Sujata Gibson. Welcome to CHD TV. Thanks for joining me this morning.
Thanks for having us, Michael.
Good to see you, Sarah. Very, very, very good to see you. So, Sarah, we have to go through a little bit for our audience what your situation was. What happened to you? And it actually happened starting in 2019 when you were 11 years old. You had a religious exemption to vaccination, but New York State repealed the religious exemption, and your parents were left with the stark decision of following their faith or allowing you to continue public school where you were a star athlete, where you wanted to stay, and they put you on a catch-up schedule of getting multiple vaccines within just a few months, and that led to injuries that you had. You were in school because you were fully vaccinated at that point, up until around 10th grade when another shot was required for you due to them not accepting your titers and a bunch of technical things that happened. And you were kicked out of school for a period of time where you weren't allowed in. Please tell us what that was like. What was it like for you to have been in school your whole life and then to be told, no, you can't come into school essentially over one vaccine?
It felt like something was getting ripped away from me, and I didn't know how important it was for a child to go through school until it was taken away. And all of my interests and everything I loved just got ripped away. I wasn't able to do it as much, and I just felt hopeless. I laid in my bed most of the day just thinking why. Like, I was just lost, and I didn't really know what to do.
You know, I'm actually getting the chills hearing you say this. I remember that period of time. I remember being on the phone with your attorney, Sujata Gibson, and talking about these things and hearing about what a tough time it was. Thank God, a year ago, almost to the day, almost to the month, a year ago, you were in federal court fighting for your rights, and a judge ordered you returned to school. It was a major victory in federal court in New York. You were allowed to go back to school. There you are in front of the courthouse, having won. Nearly 300 people came to the courthouse in support of you at that time. And you did get back into school. That was your junior year last year. You made it into school. You completed an entire year of school. How was it? How did it go?
It was definitely amazing, like just being able to speak to other kids. It was definitely hard because other people didn't understand my story as much as like my close friends and people in my life. But it was definitely hard, like getting back into the routine of going to school every single day, waking up at the same time. But it was so worth it. It was everything I needed. And it just felt so like normal and just felt so good. And there's going to be people out there that like said rumors about me, but it didn't matter because I had like my close friends that supported me. So it was very nice.
Well, yeah. So let's talk about that a little bit. That's true. I saw a lot of support for you all throughout Long Island. I saw support for you in your community. I saw a lot of people coming out. News media came and covered you very favorably, did a very, so all of those things were nice. But I bet that wasn't all of it, right? There was, like you said, there were probably some people who had a different view and a different outlook. But overall, you felt supported and you felt it was good in the year. Oh, that's
Definitely.
excellent.
It was the best year ever, actually.
Best year ever. So that's so great to hear. So hearing it was your best year ever, what advice would you have for kids in similar situations out there that are facing what you're facing, have an exemption, don't know if they're going back? What advice would you give to kids that are in the same spot you were in?
You're going to want to lose hope and you're going to want to give up, but you have to realize there are other people out there just like you, going through the same thing as you, not knowing what to do, but you have to realize that you're not alone and you're not different, and don't let people bring you down if they don't know your full story.
Wow. Wow, that's excellent. That is really, really amazing. With that, I'm going to bring in your attorney, Sujata Gibson, who's been with you on this road. Sujata, I remember maybe a year and a half ago being in a courtroom with you in Long Island where it was just Sarah and her family, me and you, and having a really bad outcome and how horrible that felt. And then just a few months later, 300 people and Sarah winning, and just what an amazing time that was. But this isn't over. Sarah just did 1 year, her junior year. She now is facing her senior year, and there is still a process she has to go through. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, I mean, the bottom line is the medical exemption process in New York is fundamentally broken. The law states that if any physician certifies that a child needs to be exempt for safety issues, then they're supposed to be exempt. But the Department of Health, especially under Governor Hochul, has taken it upon themselves to, advise schools to have school principals and others kind of override doctors' decisions. And then we have this mess where people have to litigate in federal court for years because every single year you need a new medical exemption. So we got a preliminary injunction for Sarah for last year, but now we're going to have to face next year. So I will say though that part of what we're doing and part of why CHD is jumping in, aside from the fact that this is a horrible situation that families in New York are facing, is that we're doing impact litigation to try to change the process because no family has the resources to litigate in federal court for years just to have their child go to school. But in Sarah's case, we made very important precedent. We have 7 doctors saying she needed this exemption. The school still overrode her, and I think the court did the right thing by acknowledging our argument that this is a violation likely of the Americans with Disabilities Act. So up until then, courts were often just saying, well, is there any rational reason why it could be denied? We're not going to really look at whether the child needs the exemption or not. If the school gives us any reason that's rational on its face, we'll let them exclude this child. Under the Americans with Disabilities Act, that's a much different standard. The burden goes on to the school to accept medical exemptions unless there's some really persuasive argument that they cannot and that a disabled child doesn't need it. So it's a big deal.
So Sujata, let's talk specifically about Sarah's case here. She was missing one Hep B shot. And Hep B, if you're infected with Hep B in the state of New York, it is illegal to kick someone with an active Hep B infection out of school. But because she was missing one vaccine for an illness you must be allowed in school to have, they still kicked her out. So her case is unique in a certain sense, in that the fact set, I think even the media that hated us and wanted Sarah kicked out of school when at the time had to admit, well, it does look like it's not rational to kick this child out. Why don't you talk about that and about these insane standards that we have in New York?
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, this case just highlights how bad it's gotten in New York. When you have one vaccine that is missing, that 7 doctors say is not safe for this child. In fact, Sarah even went to a walk-in clinic at one point. So she was so desperate to return to school that she went without her mother to try to get them to vaccinate her without telling them her medical history. And even the walk-in clinic took one look at her without having her history and said, no, this is unsafe. You're ineligible. They wrote it, and we gave it to the school that she's ineligible. I mean, this case is so clear cut. And yet, even then, the school district and the Department of Health assert that they should be able to deny an exemption. It really is shocking. And it's only, what we were saying then is it's only a matter of time before someone gets hurt. Well, I'm now bringing a case of someone who was in Sarah's exact position, who had multiple doctors and specialists certifying she needed an exemption. She had an exemption since preschool, and she didn't have a lawyer when she was kicked out. And like Sarah, she got really depressed, and she even got suicidal. And she got vaccinated against medical advice and now has permanent injuries that are never gonna, she's permanently injured for life. This is so reckless what's happening in New York.
Yeah, it entirely is. They're claiming this is for a greater good. They're claiming this is for public health and seem to have no problem if a child's future and healthy existence is sacrificed. in the process. I mean, thankfully, in Sarah Doe's case and some others, we have been breaking through, even with the Education for All Act, which we are pushing in Albany. Everybody we speak to up there, when we talk about medically fragile children must access school, they must have these exemptions. Nobody argues us. I mean, everybody, even the staunchest pro-vaccine supporters in Albany do not argue this. So it's one of these things where we just need to keep pushing, and we need momentum to push this and to get this going. Being that you're talking about others as well too, Sujata, people who are watching now, especially in New York, but there are other states, California, Connecticut, Maine, are the four bandits where they've made medical exemptions almost sacrilege. What can people do? Let's start with New York. What would you recommend somebody doing if they're in this situation now, if their child needs a medical exemption or has a longstanding one that was just revoked?
Well, you are going to need in New York, you're going to need a New York State licensed physician to write an exemption. And honestly, at this point, it's helpful if you can consult with a lawyer who does this kind of work. I do this kind of work and do consultations. I know there are others. Christina Martinez does this kind of work. And it's helpful because, unfortunately, they've gotten very legalistic. Now, there is a battle, though. The Second Circuit recently issued yet another decision saying that their understanding is that the state has and the schools have no power to second guess these medical exemptions. So, there are legal battles to be fought here that potentially have a lot of success. The Supreme Court also just issued a case that I think strongly supports that parents must have the final say under the Constitution. But you asked a question and I'm kind of telling you the legal theories. Basically, it's helpful to have a lawyer, and I hate that that's true, but it is. And it's cheaper to have them on the front end consulting with you than it is fighting it once it's denied, because there's language that needs to go in there, very specific language that doctors don't know about and families don't know about.
Yeah, we have done workshops in the past where we've had hundreds of people come on, but you and I just talking, we don't even know how valuable that is now, because these have all become so individualized. If people have questions, you should reach out to CHD TV. You can send us an email. That email will make it over to me. And we will see if Sujata might be right for you, if somebody else might be right for you. That would be in the state of New York, in California, Connecticut, and Maine. We will do the absolute best that we can. In the other states, it should be relatively easy. As long as you have a doctor and you go through what the process is in your state for applying for a medical exemption, you should not be facing this uphill pushing a boulder to federal court situation and scenario like we are facing in New York. You brought up one thing I did not know. You said there was a recent Second Circuit decision that reaffirms that the schools can't second guess the doctor. When did this happen? I didn't hear about this.
This is the same Miller v. McDonald case that is about religion that has been in the headlines. And for those of you who aren't familiar, there's a real battleground happening in New York right now, not only about the medical exemption, but also about the religious exemption. And nationwide, it's part of a bigger question the Supreme Court has started to weigh in on about parental rights. And so the Second Circuit dismissed a case involving religious exemptions, but it's really tied up with the medical. And the reason that they dismissed that case is they said there's no evidence that there's any discretion to accept or deny medical exemptions. So, that's a very, it's a complicated legal theory, but basically their language in that case is very helpful to us in the medical exemption fight.
That's wild. I mean, to say there's no discretion with medical exemptions in New York is like saying the sky is pink. I mean, it's insane. There's nothing but discretion. I mean, they go over these things with a fine-tooth comb. They overturn doctors. They have their own doctors who have never met the children ever once, saying no, the doctor who did meet them, who is working directly with them, is wrong. How can they possibly say there's no evidence of discretion?
In Sarah's case, and in some of the other cases we're bringing, and I'm so thankful for Sarah and others for being so brave to stand up like this, it just illustrates perfectly the information that was missing in the Second Circuit about the discretion. So it's really good, not just for the medical exemption, but also the religious, because in Sarah's case, she was accepted. One medical exemption was accepted. Her mother went to the neighboring school district doctor, begged him to see her daughter. He said, I don't give medical exemptions. But then he saw Sarah and was like, yeah, this child needs a medical exemption. And so they gave her a 3-month medical exemption. And when she went back to get a renewal, because the way that the school district was doing it was they wanted it every 3 months, he said he was scared he was going to get in trouble, but she still needed it. And so he referred her to his partner in the practice who wrote an identical medical exemption, and that was denied. So now we have a school district accepting one and denying another, and they're identical. So you can't say there's no discretion. There's no objective standard. They're clearly just doing whatever they want.
One of the things that's so fascinating to me and tragic in the Sarah Doe case is I've always suspected this. We've always discussed this in our community, but this was the first time there was irrefutable evidence and proof that denial of religious liberty led to physical injury, led to a physical injury of a child. So a child that had a religious exemption, and the parents had this for religious reasons, that religious exemption, unbeknownst perhaps to everybody, was protecting that child physically because that child couldn't handle those vaccines. Sometimes we know this, sometimes we don't know it till you try. And I find that to be fascinating and frightening, that the denial of religious liberty can actually lead to children being harmed and killed in some instances. So this broader battle that you're talking about now about bringing back the religious exemption, I think is really important in New York, nationally. And let's end off on that just a little bit. We also have the Grace Act. The Grace Act is legislation, national legislation by Greg Steube out of Florida, which would essentially protect the religious exemption in all 50 states. And it does so through a funding mechanism and such. But Greg Steube's pretty conservative, libertarian guy, knows what he thinks, and hard to sway him in any direction. But now we're getting much more middle of the road Republicans coming onto this bill as well, too. We have 3 New York representatives that are now co-sponsors: Nick Langworthy, Nick LaLota, and Mike Lawler. And especially Mike Lawler and Nick LaLota, these are not hardcore conservatives at all. These are people who conservatives criticize for being, rhinos or for working with the other side of the aisle. So even in Congress, we're seeing a shift. We're seeing a change as we're seeing Miller v. McDonald appearing to be ready to get taken up by the Supreme Court. So as you had said, Miller v. McDonald deals with the Amish in New York who are denied the right to a religious exemption or to make their own rules in their own schools, right? That they don't require vaccination in their own private schools. The Supreme Court gave the Second Circuit a chance to correct their bad decision, and the Second Circuit has not, right? Just recently, the Second Circuit essentially said, no, we got this right. A lot of people I'm talking to believe that means the Supreme Court's going to take this up come the next session, which starts in October. You, as an attorney and complete and total expert in this field, what is your opinion about the fate of Miller v. McDonald coming up in the next SCOTUS session?
Well, there's some real weaknesses there that I think, if the Supreme Court does take the case, I disagree with the circuit judges that they got the right decision. I mean, the Supreme Court has been very, very clear that this sort of that religious rights for parents is not this narrow thing that only applies to curriculum decisions or, very narrow categories, which is what the court based their second decision on. It's a broad protection, and it applies, across the board to parental decisions about the religious upbringing of their children whenever they are infringed. So I agree, even like public health scholars like Gostin, who is um, very much a supporter of vaccine mandates. Even Gostin said they'll likely overturn the Second Circuit. So I think the question is, will they take it up? They don't take up a lot of cases, but they did take this one last time.
Right.
This decision, doesn't really do what they asked the Second Circuit to do. They didn't really assess it under Mahmoud and Mirabelli the way that they were asked to do, and we'll have to see.
I think we're just about out of time now. Sarah, thank you so much for coming on. Congratulations with being able to have a full year of school. You are in our prayers for sure.
Thank you.
For this upcoming year. Hopefully everything goes smoothly, Sujata. If not, stay tuned. We will be telling people what courthouse you need to show up to and how we need to support Sarah, but hopefully that does not happen. And Sujata Gibson, thank you so much. Your wisdom in civil rights and medical freedom is just always so excellent. We will be having you back soon to discuss these issues more. Thank you both so much.
Thank you, Pat.
Thank you so much.
Excellent. Don't go anywhere. Right now, I'm going to hand it off to my colleague, Stephanie Lucretio, to discuss EMR syndrome.
Good morning, CHD. Stephanie Lucretio here with another EMR and wireless update. Today, we are talking about hope, healing, and resilience after EMR syndrome. And joining us is Mana Washio. She's a health coach, an EMR expert, and a cancer survivor. We're so happy to have you here today, Mana. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Such a pleasure. I looked at your website, so many things that I was so excited to see, like the work that you're doing and how you're using your own personal experiences to help other people. So for many of our viewers, they don't know your story. So tell us a little bit about how in 2013 EMR syndrome changed your life.
Yes. So I was actually a performing musician. And I was, performing at concert halls and teaching flute students and sending some students to conservatories. I was a very serious flute teacher also. But it changed overnight. When we were on vacation, at the time, the company's name was N-Star. Now it's called Eversource, but they installed smart meters on our apartment building. And overnight, I got sensitized. So our bedroom was sandwiched by two bank of smart meters on both sides. We actually had two circuit breaker down in the basement. We are sleeping on the first floor, and there was a transformer outside of the window, and we had a Wi-Fi router in our bedroom without knowing its harm. And it was a perfect storm, basically. So I got sensitized overnight, started having piercing headache as if somebody was inserting ice pick into my brain. And every time I came home, the symptoms are worse. And every time I went outside of my house, symptoms are better. So that's how I got sensitized. And I tried many things, and tried to stay with my occupation for about 5 years. But then there was a time that cell phones signals are getting stronger every year, and it was so hard for me to even sit in my students' recital without having chest pain, So I had to change my career, and here I am. I'm more board certified health coach now, but also went through cancer journey myself. So I'm now helping other people get better with the knowledge and experience I gained over the years.
So how did you make the connection that the smart meter and the Wi-Fi exposure and all the cell phone exposure was causing your symptoms? Mana, did you freeze? Okay. All right. So we'll just wait for her to come back. So for those of you that are watching, if you go onto Mana's website, you can see that she has really taken what she's gone through. And I love to see this because for so many people, when you're going through something, it can be so hard to come out the other end and figure out how to put together the pieces of your life and then use the experiences that you've had to be able to help other people. So we've had so many stories of people that are suffering with EMR syndrome and how devastating it's been to their life. people have had to move out of their homes, evacuate, their households that they've built over decades and lived for their entire lives, raised their families. So it's a very real thing. And my goal is always to really humanize these stories so that people understand, because like vaccine injury, we've seen over the years that so many people are being dismissed and just gaslit when they're talking about these symptoms. And unfortunately, physicians really aren't familiar with what EMR syndrome is. And so many physicians are just very dismissive when these folks come in to try to get help. So the goal with 704 No More, Stop 5G, and CHD's EMR program is to really bring awareness to what's going on with the EMR exposure and how it's impacting people. We have Mana back. Hi, we lost you.
Hello. Thank you.
Okay, don't worry. So I was saying, how did you make that connection between the fact that it was the symptoms that you were having were related to the smart meter? Did you discover that the meter had been changed?
Yep, definitely. And also standing outside right in front of those back of smart meters, I was having such bad headache. And the closer I got, the more headache I had. And also at the traffic light, they have these boxes, that has smart meter mounted on. And every time I stopped at the traffic light when I was driving, I was I was hit by this, wave. So I knew because of the direction, and I looked, and there is a smart meter. And when I'm walking in my neighborhood, as soon as I passed by somebody's house, there was smart meter, and I was like, oh, so every time it was, whenever I had that, very, really similar type of pain was whenever I was walking by smart meters.
Yeah. And for people that don't realize it, these smart meters they could be electric, they could be water, they could be your gas meter. And in many cases, these utility companies are just coming to your home, oftentimes without you even realizing it, and swapping out these meters so that they can cut their own personal workforce as far as having actual humans come out to read your meter. They're able to do it from a distance at their own facilities. So you had no idea that they were doing this.
That's right. So, sometimes, but I actually relocated to many different places because of this condition. I had to find a low EMF home and finally purchased a home that's really quite low EMF. But now they are deploying again in my town. I live in Springfield, Massachusetts, and they are pushing so hard. Like if people say no to it, then they are threatening to shut off the water service, gas service, or electric service. And it's gotten really bad. Some, residents are really standing up and trying to do something about it.
So are you not an opt-out state? Because I know in certain states, just for people that are watching, if you are facing a smart meter, in many states you're able to opt out. Of course, there's a cost monthly that you have to pay, but it's well worth not having that exposure if that option is available in your state. Is that not an option in Massachusetts?
Well, it is an option. Like if you pay $34 a month and also installation fee of $42, so like per year you are paying about $450 per meter. And if you have gas meter, then it will be $900. And if you have it for water meter, there's another fee probably, right? So like that's a significant cost, because all the utility cost is going up. Plus, like I was really clear about not wanting to have and wanted to keep the original meter, but they just ignored it and installed the meter in my house. I was just standing in front of the meter on the day of the deployment, and I even spoke with the technician, and the technician acknowledged it, and he said like he will definitely report to the company, and your house is marked as a no smart meter home. And it actually happened shortly after we bought the house at the end of 2023, we got a notice from Eversource again. This was for gas, and they were basically doing the same thing. And even if I called them, they're like, oh, like everybody has to have it, eventually. So and so they're really pushy. And even though people are opting out, I have some residents, friends in this area who keep talking about, I really want to keep my meter. And luckily her meter is in her backyard. So people can't really easily access. My meter was right in front of my garage. So from the street, pretty much everybody has access. So that's how they did it. But yeah, so anyway, so and she has been harassed repeatedly, by phone calls. So she's receiving phone calls from Eversource saying, oh, like eventually like your meter will stop working, so you have to switch to this one, and really harassing her. So she's really fed up with it. So that's what's happening. And also although like I told them, the water company, that I have this disability and cannot have the meter because it will be in right under the central area of my house, right under the living room, the water meter is. So if they replace it with RF meter, the whole house will be in RF zone basically, and I cannot live in that condition. And I told them, and even after that, they keep putting that water shut-off notice slip, like saying that if you don't change your meter, or if you don't let us access, then you have this water shut-off fee of $55 or something. And so like it's been really, and I was born and raised in Japan, and I came from Japan. But in Japan, if people say, oh, I don't want smart meter, then they acknowledge it and they don't bother it. So like it's mind-boggling that how many times like I get this kind of notification. So it's hard to understand sometimes. But
I'm so sorry that you're dealing with that. We've heard so many people that have moved from one location to the other, and you're setting up a home, and now you're dealing with the same scenario unfolding once again. So I'm praying that you can mitigate it and prevent the meter from being installed. But tell me a little bit, because you've actually made a lot of progress with your own personal health journey,
Yes.
which has been really encouraging to see, because I know so many that suffer with EMR syndrome have really a hard time figuring out how to live in the normal that we live in, with technology being everywhere and the exposure being something that's so high in many cases. So can you share a little bit about what you've done to help mitigate the exposure and to get your life back?
Sure. Yeah. First step is really to get the meter, because it's making invisible visible. These, signals are, people know that it's coming from your cell phone and Wi-Fi router, but unless you actually have the meter in your hand, you have no idea how much it's emitting. And if the exposure is really high, there is usually something you can do about it once you know. There are some products, shielding products sold from lessemf.com, Shield Your Body, techwellness.com, and those places sell like really great EMF mitigation products. And sometimes even when you're in apartment setting, there are sleep canopy you can purchase, and so like there are many things. But first you really need to know the exposure level, because if you're not sure what's happening in your living environment or sleeping environment, you are practically shooting in the dark. And also you need to make your body more resilient. And in my case, I actually sustained a serious vaccine injury prior to this incident that I got sensitized. I was applying for a green card, and I was forced to vaccinate, although I told not to, like I already had MMR and other stuff in Japan. I don't want to have it. This person said, oh, it doesn't matter. You can have them again. And boom, 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 on the same day. So like I was exposed to a lot of heavy metals and chemicals, and I had to do a lot of chelation therapy, and used homeopathy, and so many different things. But chemical heavy metal exposure, or like mold toxicity, in my case, mold was also playing the role, because in the basement, we lived in the basement, our bedroom was on the first floor, but there were cracks on the floor, and spores were coming in. We didn't know that, but there was black mold in the basement, and this wooden board that was just sitting there was covered with black mold. So I had to ask my landlord to remove it, and then my tolerance went up also. And so there are many factors, of course. Like you really need to know, if you're eating the right kind of food for your body, because if you're nutrient deficient, if chemical exposure, heavy metal exposure is one thing, but if you're deficient in certain nutrients, then you are not resilient. And also there are ways to counteract. For example, I learned Reiki, and Reiki can counteract the effects of EMF to a certain extent, but you of course have to mitigate. So like there are many ways, and grounding helps, because we are bombarded with energy, so the best way to counteract is often energy. So I speak with my clients all the time about the importance of grounding, and taking advantage of energy medicine modalities. Reiki is only one of them. There's Qigong, acupuncture, and biomagnetics, bioenergetics. There are many of them, right? Like so many modalities out there. So if they start tapping into those things, and also stress management is really the key. And also safeguarding your sleep environment is the most important part, because our damaged cells are repaired only while we sleep. So if your your sleep environment is really high EMF environment, then your body cannot recover, because even if it's trying to recover, it's always like, the most problematic aspects of EMF is it suppresses our immune systems, and it promotes inflammation. So I'm talking to cancer patients daily and for coaching session, but people often don't realize that what EMF is actually doing to their body. So education really matters. And also sometimes, it's just people feel so alone because nobody else understands. And, like my siblings are actually medical doctors in Japan, and they were completely poo-pooing, and they just thought I was having some kind of mental illness or something. That's what they came up with. And they even came up with the name of the mental illness. But, like at the time, there was not much information available. Now there are so many resources out there. Like if you look online, or there are organizations like CC Duchette, Massachusetts for Safe Technology, and there are webinars happening. So many more are aware, and also many people started speaking up. So the knowledge is growing. But at the time, like when I got sensitized, I think Jeremy Johnson also, got sensitized around the same time too. But there was very little information available. So I just felt very alone. But community and social support is so very important. I'm a radical remission certified health coach, and one of the healing factors cancer survivor did was definitely social support. So so there are many it's multifaceted, and it's really not just that you do one thing and you get better, but you just need to look at the whole physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, all different aspects in order to get well.
It sounds like the description that you gave, it was like the perfect storm of everything happening all at one time. So it really must have been quite a journey for you to unpack all of it and to figure out how to move forward. So for people that are listening, that are just getting this EMF diagnosis and the EMR syndrome diagnosis and are unsure what to do and feel hopeless, because like you said, a lot of practitioners don't understand or recognize that this is even a real issue for people. It's a real health concern. Mm-hmm. What would you tell people to give them hope, and what would be the first few steps that you would have them take? Because I know this issue can feel very overwhelming because it's very much out of our control. You can control ultimately the food you put into your body, the modalities that you choose, what you choose to bring into your house, pharmaceutical interventions that you take. But in many cases, these smart meters, these cell towers, all the exposure from the collective phones that are out there, it's not something that we really have personal control over. So what advice would you give to people struggling right now?
Yeah, so I think like a website like CC Duchette's website, Massachusetts for Safe Technology, or Environmental Health Trust, or Jeremy Johnson's website, all those places are a really great place to go. And but the first thing is you really need to purchase an EMF meter. There are two kinds of layperson's meter: cornet meter and also tri-field meter, which is under $200. And of course it doesn't measure dirty electricity, which is another component of EMF, but still, like you can have a good idea of what's happening where. And usually if you find big source of EMF, then you can do something about it. Right? Like if it's a Wi-Fi router, and depending on the severity of the symptoms, some people are okay by just turning off, Wi-Fi router at night and they can sleep okay. But other people are so much more sensitive, they actually have to hardwire the internet. Right? And I have all like hardwired internet set up for myself. That's why I can work for many hours in front of my computer. But at first, it was impossible for me to use Zoom because the camera from the Zoom was giving me so much headache and eye pain. I couldn't sit for more than 2 minutes in front of it. Right? But now I'm working with my clients all over the US and abroad and using this technology. And of course, I'm not saying no to technology, but we are just advocating safe technology usage. So so finding the culprit, basically like where it's coming from, like how much you're getting, especially when you're sleeping, or especially when you're working. If your work environment where you spend most of the time of the day, or while you're sleeping, you're getting a lot of EMF exposure, then your body is not going to get better. You have to do something about it. And there are so many experts out there now who could help you guys through and navigate that journey. So that reducing exposure is number one. And also you need to learn how to use your devices safely, because even text messages, you can just turn on the airplane mode, type the messages, hit send, and disable the airplane mode. And then all the outgoing messages go out and the incoming messages come in. And if you can do that, then you can significantly reduce the exposure. You might be so surprised once you have the EMF meter in your hand, before and after you turn on airplane mode. Of course, with the newer phone, a little bit different story. But even if it's emitting a little bit while it's on airplane mode, you can still stick it into Faraday bag, which is sold at techwellness.com. And then, so Faraday bag will completely stop the signal from coming in and coming out. So while you are not using it, you can put it in Faraday bag if it's still emitting at airplane mode. Okay, so so those are so basically connect with people who already went through the journey, so that you can be most efficient in navigating, the path to healing. Because I learned so much, but at the time, like, there was nobody else who was teaching this, So now I can teach people. So if people want to reach out to me, I'll be happy to help them. But you need to take the first step of finding out what's happening in your house and in your sleeping environment.
I totally agree. I got my Safe and Sound Pro meter.
Good. Yay.
Yes. It's definitely a handy tool. I will say, when I first got it, I was overwhelmed by the amounts of radiation in my environment, and I'm still working on mitigating that. So I encourage people to get it, to use it, like you said, in those areas that you're sleeping in, spending a lot of time in. It's so important to make sure that we're reducing the exposure as much as we can. I'm so thankful that you came on the show today to share your journey and to share all the wisdom that you've gathered over the years of dealing with this, and that you're using this to help other people. So how can people find and follow you for more information?
So my website is currently down for some reason, but I hope to, get it up and running again. And so the website address is, so that's the Nutritional Solutions. So if you go to Nutritional Solutions website, then, you will be able to reach out to me also. But I have my own, separate website called livingwaterreikiwellness.com. So I can share the link with you later if you'd like to include.
That would be great. We could put it in the show notes.
Yeah. And so I have to figure out, something is happening and people cannot access my website for some reason, but, I need to fix it soon. So that's where you can find me also.
Perfect. Thank you so much for being here this morning and talking with us. And we'll definitely have you back soon. Stay on the journey. Keep helping people. It's so amazing to see the work that you're doing. We're so thankful.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It was
a pleasure. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
So Mana's story is a powerful reminder that our environment absolutely matters, and that having access to information and the ability to inform choices is so essential for protecting our health and our communities. If you want to learn more and take action, we invite you to join 704 No More. You can share our educational flyers, you can download different presentation materials, and start conversations with your HOA or community leaders. Help educate your neighborhoods about privacy, transparency, and the importance of local decision-making, as well as all of the issues around health impacts from this exposure. Together, we can raise awareness, strengthen community voices, and ensure that people have a say in the technologies being introduced into places where we live, work, and raise our families. So keep up the amazing work, keep tuning in, keep signing those action alerts, getting on our informational podcast, really tuning into all of the different things that we're doing. It is making such a huge difference. And I'll be back here with you, another update soon. So have a great rest of the day. And thank you so much for tuning in.
Sure. Okay, we're live. Can you tell us your name?
I'm Debbie.
Debbie, and this is about your brother.
Yes.
What year is this?
was 1985, and I was 15 years old when it happened.
Tell us what happened.
So he was at daycare, and I was at school. I came home. There was a message on the answering machine that they had gone to the hospital because he was having difficulty breathing. And so I kind of went about my business. I didn't really think much of it. And it was homecoming, so I was down in my room getting ready to go to the homecoming game. And my parents came home. And they said, you need to come up here because we don't think we can make it down there to you. And so I went up the stairs, and they told me that he had died. Later, an autopsy was done, and it was ruled a SIDS.
Let me just show everybody his picture. This is Danny.
Danny, yep.
Little Danny boy. And how old was Danny at that time?
He was 3 months and 27 days old, so it was his 4-month shots that got him, the DTP and OPV.
And tell people what OPV is.
Oral polio vaccine.
So in those days, they would have just like a little squirt in the mouth, or I had a sugar lump.
Yeah, it was probably, I'm guessing, the squirt.
Squirt, because he's only 3.5 months.
And
So
then it was whole cell pertussis.
So for people who don't know, DPT is now off the market. It's. Do you want to talk about? Do you know anything about DPT?
Just that I know the whole cell was very highly toxic, and it's hurt numerous children, and they don't give it here in the United States anymore. But I think, if I'm correct, they're still giving it in Africa. Possibly?
More than likely, they seem to do. I'm just going to put Danny up here a second.
Thank you.
Okay.
And so now they have DTaP and TDAP, which are the acellular versions, but they're still hurting children.
And what have you got there on your phone? Were you going to show us something?
This is his shot record.
From way back then, you've got a shot
Yeah.
record.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can show everybody this. I don't know how this is going to look. Phone to phone, you may not be able
So
to see
you
this.
can see he had on 10/8/1985 hit those 2 vaccines, DTP and OPV. And then I also have his death announcement on my phone on 10/11/1985. He was dead.
And so, you were, what, 15 did you say at the time? So how did that, what is this?
That's his death announcement. I've got the last name covered just out of respect for my parents.
No, of course.
They're just private people.
So how did that affect you? Do you have children?
I do.
And how did that affect you with vaccinating?
Well, I unfortunately didn't quite wake up to that soon enough. I am a registered nurse, and I can tell you every time I took my children in, I always had a horrible feeling in my stomach and my chest, which I believe is the Holy Spirit cautioning me. But, you know, you know how it is. Everybody's like, you know, the shots, and I didn't know, which kills me that I didn't know this, that I could say no.
And now?
I'm 100% anti-vax. 100%.
There's nothing that would make you take a shot or
Nothing.
vaccine?
Nothing.
Good for you.
Nothing. And I did stop vaccinating my children. I did stop.
Well, we're going to put Danny on the bus. We're going to keep him on the bus. He travelled on the Vax bus. I remember him. He's now here on the Children's Health Defence bus. I'm going to sign his name on the bus. Thank you for everything you're doing.
Thank you, Polly.
This and all CHD TV programming is made possible by generous support from viewers like you. Please consider making a contribution today to keep our programming going strong. Thank you.